Good evening. Hello. On behalf of the Muse Writer Center here in Norfolk, Virginia, let me please welcome you to tonight's launch for Mike Krentz's novel, Dead Already. I'm Kelly Sokol, a novelist and educator here at the Muse, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be here tonight. The Muse Writer Center is a burgeoning literary center serving now in 2020, the world, but primarily the Southeastern Virginia. We have classes from introduction to fiction, poetry, creative nonfiction, up to studio and professional writing classes. And an evening like tonight is such a bright spot in a challenging year to be a part of the Muse. And so again, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We're going to have a reading tonight from our author, Mike Krentz, and then we'll follow that up with a just brisk question and answer session. Please enter your questions in the YouTube chat function, and Sean at the Muse will make sure that Mike has your cues so he can give his A's for tonight. I've worked with Mike for a couple of years now, and I know him as one hell of a writer. His first drafts make all of his beta readers feel bad about ourselves, but he's also never satisfied with an okay enough draft. Mike is a relentless reviser, and his dedication to improving his craft is a large part of why he's here tonight. Mike Krentz is a generous member of our literary community who always has time for insight for a fellow writer. Born and raised in Arizona, Dr. Mike Krentz earned a classical degree in English from the University of San Francisco, a Doctor of Medicine degree from the Medical College of Wisconsin, and a Master of Public Health degree from Johns Hopkins University. Following his successful civilian emergency medicine career, Mike served the nation as a U.S. Navy physician and fleet surgeon. Serving in hospitals, ships, and air wings, he earned 10 personal decorations, including 5 awards of the Legion of Merit. Upon retirement, he continued his service as a Navy public health consultant. After completing that mission, he returned to his earliest life passion as a full-time writer of character-based fiction. And tonight, we get to introduce everybody to Zach Winston in the first book in this series. Please let me turn this over to the man of the night, Mike Krentz, who will be reading from Dead Already.
Well, thank you, Kelly. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be here. And I've just got to say from the outset, if there were no Muse, there would be no launch of a novel by Mike Krentz. Because the 2 years of experience that I had with the Muse and with Kelly's fiction studio really made the difference in terms of pushing me to improve my craft, as she said, and to get across the finish line. So I will always be indebted to the Muse. Dead Already is a story about an emergency physician named Zach Winston. He's not had an easy life, and that comes out in the novel. He suffers from some past traumas. On the day in question, he received a patient in full cardiac arrest whom he had seen the day before, complaining of chest pain. And I've actually posted a link to the first chapter in my website. And earlier I did a video of the original scene. So I'm going to move on from that initial scene. Suffice to say that Zach has experienced the ultimate surprise and devastation of being an ER doc and seeing a patient that you sent home yesterday coming back in extremis, and the patient went on to die. So Zach is now returning to the main treatment area after he's consoled the wife of the patient, Carl Barnett. His wife's name is Janice Barnett. God save us from emergency physicians. Zach recognized the bombastic voice of Dr. Jeremiah Hart, medical director of the ICU and chief of the medical staff. Pursuit, stout and loud, he could verbally eviscerate the most confident, and he didn't care about witnesses. Oblivious to the patients in the curtained cubicles lining his path, Hartman bore down on Zach like an eagle on a wounded gerbil. Did you not realize Carl Barnett was my patient? Concerned about confidentiality and his pending humiliation and earshot of patients and staff, Zach gestured toward the ER lounge. Let's talk in private. He led his accuser into the room, shut the door, and turned to face him. I did treat Carl. I noted you are his physician. Why the hell didn't you call me? He barked as if Zach had stolen a favorite bone. No doubt his baritone voice projected to the treatment area. Zach retreated a step. No time. He arrived in non-survivable cardiac arrest. He was dead when he hit the door. No one could have saved him. Zach moved to leave the lounge. Patients needed him, and he had another hour to go before he could retreat to solitude and a bottle of Tuscan Red at home. The hound blocked his path. We're not done. Zach stopped. What? You saw Carl yesterday. Sent him out with acute coronary syndrome. Zach folded his arms, squared his stance. Not true. I did evaluate him yesterday. He came in with atypical chest pain, and I ruled out cardiac etiology. Jerry moved closer, snorted into Zach's face. Yet he suffers a fatal cardiac arrest the next day. You missed something, doctor. No, I did not. Zach reached for the doorknob. Jerry stopped him. This death was preventable. I will review the record. If I find a single discrepancy, you will answer for it. Zach scoffed. Do what you wish. Now get out of my face. He pushed past Jerry and returned to the main treatment area, ignoring the curious eyes looking for a cloud of smoke billowing from his rear. Then I'd like to introduce the second main character in the novel, Bridget Larson, who's an attorney who eventually ends up defending Zach in the malpractice case that ensues from the Carl Barnett case. And when we first meet Bridget, she's defending a young emergency physician by the name of Dr. Julie Dawson. The plaintiff's expert has just testified that Dr. Dawson missed a cardiac heart attack, and the patient's subsequent death was her fault. And so Bridget leads him through the technical findings, and then she says, Dr. Sanders, do you know an emergency physician academic, Dr. Evan Reed? I've heard of him. Are you familiar with Dr. Reed's study published in the Annals of Emergency Medicine in 2013, wherein he describes a formula for differentiating benign early repolarization from critical heart attack? No. Bridget squinted at him. You do read medical journals, don't you, doctor? The man scowled. Of course. Bridget smiled. What if I tell you that the formula that Dr. Reed derived in that study establishes as independent predictor of early repol over stemming, technical stuff that she explained earlier, that a competent emergency physician such as Dr. Dawson here might correctly interpret that EKG as benign, not a heart attack. She walked toward the jury. Dr. Sanders, when did you last treat a patient in the ER? The man bristled. I don't work ER shifts anymore. I'm a consultant. Bridget lifted her eyebrows. You don't see patients? Since when? Roger Meadows, the plaintiff's attorney, fidgeted behind her, but no objection came. Roughly 5 years. Wow. How do you stay current in your profession? A lot could change in that time, right? Well, I read. He stopped, catching himself. Medical journals? Shoulders slumped. Yes. Just not the Annals of Emergency Medicine, huh? Roger Meadows yelled from his seat. Objection. Sustained. The judge scowled. Wrap this up. She stepped toward the doctor. Stepped away from the doctor, I'm sorry. Turned to the jury. What consulting do you do, Dr. Sanders? Expert legal testimony? I am in demand for that. No other consulting beyond expert testimony? No, I mean, yes, that's all I do. She moved within 2 feet of him. You get paid for your testimony, doctor? I receive remuneration for my time. Bridget inched closer. How expensive is your time, doctor? I devote many hours to researching the cases and preparing my testimony. Just not, she made a pretense of catching herself in mid-sentence. Oops, almost mentioned the annals of emergency medicine again. She felt the judge's glare and turned to him. Thanks for your presence. Patience, Your Honor. She swung back to the jury. And for yours, ladies and gentlemen. One final question for the expert here. She inspected him from head to toe. When she spoke, her voice rose in a steady crescendo. That's an Armani suit, right? Custom tailored shirt, Rolex watch, Gucci shoes, all paid for by remuneration for your precious time, doctor? Meadows nearly toppled the table in front of him. Objection! Withdrawn. As she strode past the jury, Bridget caught a few smiles. She stood next to her shy client. No further questions. And finally, if I may, Kelly, am I doing all right? Time-wise? Okay. There's another main character, important character in the book. Her name is Noelle Robinson. She's a little mysterious, but she's a naval aviator that Zach Winston met when he was early in his career, when he was a naval flight surgeon. They fell in love, got married, and through various machinations on Zach's part, they ended up deploying together on an aircraft carrier, the USS Kitty Hawk. The sun had set over Kitty Hawk, transforming the South China Sea from a shimmering gold mirror to a pellucid sheet of deep blue glass. Zach sat in the back of the squadron ready room watching Noelle and her fellow aviators brief for their night flights, the most dangerous of the risky operations in the life of a naval aviator. After the brief, Zach and Noelle lingered in the ready room. Fly safe. Noelle frowned. Quit saying that. She turned and left the ready room. Zach climbed the interior stairs up to Vulture's Row on the center island of the aircraft carrier to watch Noelle's launch and landing. As she walked to Zach watched Noelle's confident professional stride as she walked to her jet. He waved as she climbed into the cockpit, but she did not look toward Vulture's Row. She knew he was there, but once she walked onto that flight deck, Noelle allowed nothing to occupy her mind except the immediate mission. On her turn to launch, Noelle throttled the jet up to full afterburner. A second later, the catapult hurled it forward and slingshot it off the deck in a stream of fire from the burner. Noelle took it out of burner and soared into the black night. A sudden flash ignited in the area of Noelle's left engine, then another on the right. The aircraft position lights dove into rapid descent toward the water's surface. Zach's heart rose in his throat. Then he saw a smaller flash followed by a thin stream of light rising toward the sky, like an ejection. A second later, the soul-rending cacophony of combined explosion and massive water displacement shook the night. Noelle's jet had just crashed into the sea. And it goes on from there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike. And now I will not give any spoilers, readers, but be prepared for chapters to end on nail-biting cliffhangers, just like that one, that will propel your reading late into the night and into the early morning, because he's a compulsively readable writer. All right, Mike, are you ready to take some questions?
Sure, fire away.
All right, excellent. And again, if you're watching this, please enter your questions into the YouTube chat function. Don't be afraid if you don't have a YouTube channel. You just have basically click that button. You can establish a channel, ask a question, and we'll keep our conversation going. Mike, we have a question from Sylvia Liu. She says, hi. How long ago did you start writing creatively with the intent to publish a novel?
Short answer, 10 years ago. There's a longer answer if you want to hear it, but yeah, it was 10 years ago. It was toward the end of my naval career. I was the 7th Fleet surgeon and trying to figure out what I was going to do after I had to retire from the Navy in 2012. So 2010, I decided, well, maybe I should write. and of course, little did I know how difficult it was going to turn out to be. But that was when I started.
Excellent. Well, and it sounds like from your bio too, this has been a lifetime love of yours, the words and the written word and the page.
Yeah, I took a aberrant pathway, as we say in medicine, to a medical career because particularly many years ago when I was trying to get into medical school, the standard gouge, as we call it in the Navy, was you got to have a degree in biology or chemistry or physics, some sort of science degree. And I said, yeah, I think I'm going to major in English because I really like literature. And if I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to spend the rest of my life doing science. So I would really like to do something besides study science in college. So I majored in English, minored in philosophy, and took my pre-med requisites as electives. The result being that I almost didn't get into medical school, but I did, and so I really probably writing was my first love even before medicine.
Excellent. Well, that actually leads us very much into our next question from Susan Paxton. She says, it's obvious that your medical knowledge comes, so much from your career and what you've lived, but your readers are also really impressed with your facility with the legal world. She's wondering where you obtained your legal knowledge and how you prepped for that part of the novel.
So, in my career, I had the opportunity. Fortunately, I was never sued throughout my 40-plus year career in medicine, both as a private emergency physician and in the Navy. But I had the opportunity to do a lot of expert testimony, such as I portray in the book with the evil Dr. Sanders, who's a money-grubbing plaintiff's expert, and unfortunately, people like that exist. That make a career out of expert testimony for plaintiffs' attorneys and defense attorneys as well. So that was part of it, and the other part of it was research. I did a lot of research, but part of the training that you go through as you experience a practice in medicine, you do learn the legal aspect because you really need to know it, particularly when it comes to being able to tell the difference between an honest error in judgment or an honest mistake and negligence that causes harm. So, yeah.
Excellent. How would you describe the themes of Dead Already for those out there who have yet to pick up their copy of the novel?
Redemption. I mentioned in my introduction that Zach Winston, who's in mid-career, probably early to mid-40s, has not had an easy life. He's not been real good at relationships, and he's suffered from time to time from confidence issues. And frankly, impairment issues. So in the book, he has to face up to his demons. And by so doing, by facing his demons and overcoming them, then he redeems himself professionally and personally.
Excellent.
With some help from his attorney.
Well, I'm really excited. We have a question coming in that speaks to the kind of writer geek in so many of us. From Jane Krentz, she said, "Congratulations on the success of Dead Already. This is a tightly plotted novel," and she is absolutely spot on there. She asked, what was the biggest structural challenge in terms of unwinding the plot as you built it?
First of all, true confession, Jane Ann Krentz, who's a prominent romantic suspense novelist with over 50 New York Times bestsellers, is my cousin by marriage. She's married to my cousin Frank, and has been a tremendous support in getting me to this point. I started off with, actually, I should give credit where it's due here. There is a writers organization based in New York and Washington, D.C. area, the Algonquian Writers Salon. And they put on a pitch fest that I attended, and then I took some of their online classes and went from a 3-act structure to a 5-act structure that really helped me put the novel together. And the initial draft, frankly, was boring. I guess many first drafts are, but I looked at it and I said, I wouldn't read this. So how do I make it different and how do I make it interesting? And that was where I kind of really started honing in on Zach Winston's character. And I actually needed a kind of an archetypical conscience, if you will. And that's when Noelle was born. And I'll say no more about that.
Oh, how fascinating. Another question has just come in and said, what other projects or novels are you working on?
So I am working, as Kelly knows, because I've workshopped it in her studio, working on a sequel to Dead Already. The prospective title is Warm and Dead. And if there's any ER docs or ER people out there listening, you understand that Warm and Dead is a reference to cold water drowning, where the rule is the patient who's been suffered from cold water immersion is never really dead until they're warm and dead, because hypothermia is actually protective to the vital organs, and they can survive. There's tremendous stories of survival from drowning events. So there's that one in the work. I've done another, which is a psychological thriller, a little darker kind of novel for me, that helps, that kind of, I have a excuse me, a fascination. That's not a COVID cough, by the way. I have a fascination with psychology and psychiatry, and so I had an opportunity to write a novel that delves into some fairly deep psychological issues and made a thriller out of that. That's what I'm working on.
What comes first for you, Mike? Is it a character, a plot point? What generally is your jumping off point for a new story?
It's probably a theme, and then the character and the plot. And I am, as they say, are you a pantser or a plotter? I'm definitely a pantser. I don't do outlines. I did an extensive outline for an early novel, and it was a big waste of time because I didn't follow the outline. So I start off with a concept, and it's usually some sort of overarching theme. And then I get into the characters and have a general idea of the plot. But until I actually start writing it, I need the characters to tell me what the plot is. Because I'll be heading off in a certain direction, and the character will say, "No, I'm not doing that. I'm doing this, because this is what my character will do." And that happened with Dead Already several times.
What was the most surprising moment in the draft creation? I'm going to ask you a follow-up question about your publication route and what surprised you in that. But in terms of creating this story, what moment surprised you the most?
So, yeah, the epiphany. I mentioned earlier that I went to a pitch fest in New York. It was a 3 or 4 day, I think 3 day, really intense seminar, room full of about 30 people or less, maybe only a couple dozen, moderated by a prominent agent and author, Paula Meunier. And we all came in with our finished novels and pitched them, and learned to pitch them. And the epiphany was, this novel is nowhere near finished. It's just really in the early drafting phase. And you mentioned earlier about revision. This is an entirely different story than it was 2 years ago when I went up to New York and figured I'd, pick up an agent while I was there. No, it needed a lot more work. And so that was the epiphany moment for me.
So we had a question come in from the Sean Gervon, said, any chance you'll be writing a novel about a pandemic in the midst of a chaotic election season, especially with your public health background?
No. And this is an opportunity to plug another emergency physician author. Unfortunately, I don't have her book in front of me because it's on a Kindle. But Kimmery Martin is an emergency physician who writes medical fiction, not thrillers. It's character-based medical fiction, very well done. And she's currently I think she's in editing on her third novel, which is about a pandemic. So I think there's going to be a lot of that. Kimmery's novel is unique because it's about the characters and the friendships that develop amongst these 5 physicians all over the country as they deal with this. No. Now the election season, no.
I understand. Sometimes we need fiction, and we need this beautiful escape that writers can give us from, these harrowing times. And it's funny how a thriller that can keep our hearts racing and our consciousness kind of zeroed in can be kind of a lifeline right now. So thank you for what you have done. Do you see the story as you would a film, or do you hear the dialogue first?
That's interesting because I really do tend to look at it as a film. And my initial foray into becoming a writer, I actually thought I was going to do TV scripts. And the first novel started out as a script. So I do tend to write as if I was writing a script. So there's a lot of tight action and dialogue. Particularly, I like dialogue.
Your dialogue is very strong. And I always love hearing what comes to a writer first, right? Because some of us, it is that dialogue. Other people, it's the characters. Other people have to build that physical world to help work us in.
What I really struggle with is description. I like dialogue. I can do dialogue. I like action. Description, I have to work hard at description. I see the scene, but I need to work hard to describe the scene as if it were through the lens of a camera.
Yeah, it's that important gulf between the mind of the writer and the page that we're always trying to bridge. A future reader, John Weech, says, I'm excited to read the book. As an insurance defense attorney and a fan of mysteries, it sounds like a great read. Where can we find your book?
Well, it's on Amazon, both Kindle, and it is up on Kindle Unlimited. If anybody is a subscriber to Kindle Unlimited, it's available through that. And it's also available in paperback, obviously, because you and I both have it. The paperback is also available online at Barnes & Noble. It's not at any local bookstores yet, but hoping. But it's on Amazon. It's under my name, Mike.
Terrific. So would you be willing to talk to us a little bit about your road to publication with Dead Already? I know this is something that it feels so daunting to people starting out or even, years or more into their hopes of publishing.
Right. The short version is, what do you call an author who never gives up? Published. And it's the tenacity and sticking with it and just constantly improving the story, improving the craft, networking, and just never give up. And good things happen. I had a lot of rejections. Okay, shall we say 3 figures rejections from agents. And in the last year or two, I got serious feedback from agents that medical thrillers just didn't sell. So even though they liked the story that I pitched to them, they didn't. And it is a business after all. They didn't feel it would sell. So the suggestion was made actually at a writers' conference here in Norfolk 2 years ago, or in 2019, at the Hampton Roads Writers Organization annual conference. I pitched it to several agents, and one agent said to me, "You should go to a small press." And so I did. I queried several small presses, and I can't even remember how I found Touchpoint Press, which is the press that recommended some revisions, and I made the revisions, and they picked it up, and I've been very, very happy with them, and very, very appreciative with them for giving me a chance to publish this novel. So you never know what road you're going to take. I mentioned earlier, a few years ago, I trotted up to New York City, figuring I was going to come back with a book deal. And no, it's a lot of work, and you just gotta never give up. Keep trucking.
Easier said than done, but you are definitely, the proof. You've done that. You've put in the work. You've kept going, and you've kept improving, and and look where we are. Jeffrey Mirvash says there must be a temptation to imbue protagonists with some autobiographical elements. What about Dr. Winston is a part of you, other than being a huge Nationals fan, of course?
Okay, that's my son-in-law. And he knows I'm a Yankees fan, so he's yanking my chain.
Oh, that's funny. He snuck one in there.
Yeah. But that's okay. We do that all the time. I would say that most authors will tell you that there's always some autobiographical element in what they write. Because if you write fiction, you're writing something inside of you is compelling you to put those words on the page. And you might not even understand it yourself. And I think that's one of the driving factors that keeps us writing, is because it's an expression of some deep inner self that we may or may not be aware of. So in that sense, I think most authors put some part of themselves into the book. Some of the scenes actually came from my experience as an emergency physician, and the one I read first tonight, I had originally thought I wanted to be a neurosurgeon, a brain surgeon, and I did that for about 6 months and thought, oh, it's crazy. I would really want to be an ER doc. So I left the neurosurgery residency, and at that time you could go to work in an emergency department without having completed an emergency medicine residency. You can't do that anymore. So there I was on my very first shift as an official attending emergency physician, and I hear this guy stomping down the hall, "God save us from emergency physicians." And I thought, oh my God, what have I done? I left this potentially lucrative career in neurosurgery, and I'm an ER doc, and this guy who happened to be a pulmonologist. says that emergency physicians aren't any good. So that's actually where that scene came from. And there are several of the other scenes. There's another scene in there that involves an egregious medical error that actually happened too. A couple of the others did as well.
We talk often about it in our studio that if you write fiction and you're not pulling some details from real life, you're ignoring source material. And I believe for a fiction writer, it's a confusing badge of honor to have your fictional work kind of sometimes confused and conflated with your personal history. And the way I tend to look at it is it means you're doing something very right if people assume that they're reading, your life story. So keep on doing what you are doing.
Yes, and I have to say there's a lot of non-autobiographical material in Dead Already. Most of it is make-believe.
Well, and that's what Geraldine Kaiser wants to know. She said she's already started Dead Already and she's really enjoying it. She's wondering if your characters are drawn at all from people you've dealt with in your career or if they're entirely fabricated from your imagination.
Neither. All my characters are some sort of composite of idealized or perhaps fictionalized characters out of my head, and with a sprinkling of real people. And again, Jeremiah Hartman, whose epithet I read here, he's not any person that I ever met, including the one that said that God save us from emergency physicians. He's nothing like that guy. But it's a composite of other physicians that I've dealt with in my life. Bridget Larson is the same way. I don't know Bridget Larson. I don't know anybody like her. She's a composite. And some of her is just absolutely make-believe.
Well, again, I think that your characters read so real and vividly on the page that it seems like quite the artistic miracle, right? That we can create these people. And it's that reminder of what you're doing every day when you're putting pen to paper, which is awfully exciting. If you had one piece of advice to somebody who is maybe where you were partway through that very first draft of what became Dead Already, what would you give them?
Don't strive for perfection on the first draft. I know, and I think you probably do too, Kelly, from teaching the studios. Some potentially good writers just can't get past the first chapter because they keep working it. And I think that if you want to be a writer, you just got to write. Sit down and write, and you're going to put a lot of, pardon the expression, garbage on the page, and then you're going to throw out the garbage, and there might be a couple really precious jewels in there that you then further develop. There's no easy path. You just got to sit in the chair and pound away. And as I said earlier, you just never give up.
I think those are pretty perfect words. And we have a late breaking question from Judy Hopkins, and anyone else with questions, please feel free to add them to the chat function here on YouTube. But she asks, what is your daily or weekly writing schedule? What's your process?
It doesn't exist, in spite of what I just said. There is the ideal writing schedule, which is that I'll start writing in the morning and then do email and stuff in the afternoon. But I just, even after 20 years in the Navy, I can't regiment myself to a plan of the day, so to speak. I do write every day. Whether I've quit setting a word limit for myself because I found that I can sit down and do 5,000 words one day and maybe 100 the next. but eventually it all always ends up. And the other thing that I would say is you can't outrun your imagination. I spent a lot of time staring out the window, but I'm writing when I'm staring out the window because I'm processing, and you don't really schedule that. You don't know when it's going to happen. Oftentimes I've got a new puppy, and oftentimes it happens while I'm walking the puppy. You just don't know. So as far as the answer to Judy's question is, I think you just write daily and write for a certain period of time, whatever's comfortable for you.
Otherwise, those characters, they can kind of get in the way of what you're trying to do in your, real life. I think we have all found as well.
Right.
Well, Mike, I want to say thank you so much for joining us tonight and letting us in on this exciting new chapter, pun 100% intended, in your writing life. For everybody who is watching, if you have any more questions, shoot them in right now. But I want to remind you to check out, so Mike is available and active on social media. You can find his various accounts. He's on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can learn more about Mike and more about his book and his Flagship Series as well, and keep up with everything that is coming and going with Dead Already, which has really made quite a splash in its first couple of weeks in the world.
Yeah, we're doing okay. We're #1 new release in medical thrillers on Amazon, which is
pretty amazing.
And we're hovering right around the top 25 medical thrillers on Amazon with some fairly familiar names: Karen Slaughter, Michael Crichton, whose debut novel is still with us. So that he wrote under a pseudonym when he was a resident. I do want to do one other thing, and Kelly doesn't know I'm going to do this, so this is not scripted or prearranged. But I wanted to point out this book, okay, The Unprotected by Kelly Sokol, which she wrote several years ago. And the reason I want to recommend it is not only because it's very well done and very well written. It's touted as women's fiction. Guys, you need to read this book. If you are married to somebody who's going to have a baby or has had a baby, or you think you may someday be a dad, and you want to really understand what it's like to be a new mom, especially a new mom who's been a professional and is now in the new mom role, pick this up, The Unprotected by Kelly Sokol. You'll learn a lot from it, I promise you. And that was, like I said, Kelly didn't know I was going to do that.
Yeah, well, I'm speechless. And if any of you listening and watching who don't know Mike, this is 100% something he would do at his own book launch. He will try to, share kind words for a fellow writer that is just the human that he is. Thank you so much, Mike. That was really, really kind and generous. And again, everybody check out Dead Already. It's in ebook form. It's in paperback form. I think it's coming soon in an audiobook as well. And so check it out. It's perfect time for gift giving, but it really is a tremendous story. And once you're in it, it's very, very difficult to put down. Please, too, if you really from anywhere now, check out the Muse. We're www.the-muse.org. We have a new schedule coming out hopefully this week with our kind of early spring winter classes and looking forward into 2021. We will be entirely online for the winter. So again, the upside to this is that we can help writers write wherever you are, as well as continuing to write where we are. So please check out the website. Again, look up Mike Krentz and enjoy the read and the ride along with it. Thanks again, Mike.
Thank you, Kelly, and thanks again to the Muse. As I said at the beginning, and it's worth repeating, I wouldn't be here if I hadn't signed on to the Muse. And if you're interested in writing of any sort, check it out. It's really worth the experience.
It's an incredible community. Well, cheers to you, Mike. This is so exciting. Thank you so much for letting us all be a part of your book launch. We can't wait to see how Zach Winston continues and his series in the future as well.
He still has room to grow.
He does.
Don't we all?
Be well, everybody. Stay safe. And thank you again so much for joining us on your Sunday evening.
Thank you.
Happy reading, happy writing. Thank you, Mike.